Can I say one thing about the whole cancellation? In this case, people who are like, they canceled Chappelle again, holy shit, they've made Chappelle trend on Twitter for multiple days. They've made the special trend. They've made the numbers go through the roof, and he's making $20 million off it. I think he made $20 million per special or something to that effect. 60 to $80 million. If that's what canceling is, then I'm sure everybody is waiting to be canceled. Yeah, I mean, there's a handful of people who've had really bad takes about the whole Chappelle thing. The best video on it that I could recommend to everybody, honestly, is Jessie Genders. Jessie Genders' video on Chappelle. It's a long watch if you don't have like 55 minutes, but man, she knocks it out of the park. She's like, it's the most good faith interpretation of Dave Chappelle's jokes coming from a white woman at the end of the day. I mean, she's a trans white woman, and so she acknowledges her whiteness. She speaks about her whiteness, and she says, hey, there's a whole bunch of things that I want to talk about. And there are moments, if you haven't already watched Chappelle's new special, there are moments of the special that are genuinely important for people to think about and for people to question. The parts like, you know, when it's like, hey, I'm an edgy comic, I'm gonna challenge your ideas by being racist. Too challenging for you? Well, there are things that are actually challenging in that, and the concept. And Chappelle's had he's had a criticism of specifically white gay men, white cis gay men for a while, which are apt. They are apt criticisms that the road from them being incredibly oppressed in society to being welcomed in society was also matched with a non-loss of material gains to the large part, right? Like, there's no question that there is a whole bunch of struggle and difficulty for being a gay man, an open gay man in society, for sure. But the idea that like cis white gay men don't themselves have quite a bit of privilege is something that also it's something that makes people uncomfortable to talk about or uncomfortable to think about and stuff like that. Whereas members of, you know, far more marginalized communities will be like, oh yeah, they've been a problem for a while, or whatever you want to say, right? Those parts of the special, unfortunately, are completely tarnished with the transphobia. And I know people are like, he wasn't being transphobic. You don't understand. In a lot of ways, what he's doing is he actually talks about how he's got a trans friend and like, you know, and that you can't in-group and out-group, and that comedians are their own group. And so technically, you know, he didn't think of like his really close friend as like a trans woman. He thought of her as a fellow comedian. And so that's why it's not transphobic. It's like, no. There's shit in that special that is just weapons grade transphobia, the kind of stuff I would expect from a conservative stand-up routine, making fun of trans people's genitals, saying that they're different and weird, talking about how a group, trans people don't constitute a group the same way black people do, and then he makes a dad joke. He's like, "What are y'all from Transylvania?" Saying that gender is essential, going on like a turf rant for a while, being like, every single person in this room at one point or another came from a woman's body. Gender is important. Gender is essential. Like, no, these are turf talking points. And what is really fucked up about the whole thing, people don't realize turfs aren't just like a term or just like something that people say to identify people who happen to feel that way. Turfs are an organized group, many of them very loud and vocal, who have paired up with conservative Christian groups like the Heritage Foundation. And that's a really fucked up thing, because the Heritage Foundation also actively works to do shit against cis women, you know, to do anti-abortion policies and stuff like that. They aren't just people online. Like, TERFs are actually actively fighting to make life worse for trans people on a daily basis. They are very, very dangerous. And like, to say I'm Team TERF or to normalize TERFs or to like, that is something that the right has been doing to certain degrees of efficacy, because ain't no one buying that all of a sudden Sargon of Akkad is a feminist, right? But they latched onto this idea that, you know what, I'm just talking about how there's biological women and y'all are trying to infringe on their rights. You're being an anti-feminist because you are trying to say that trans women should be allowed into women's spaces and they're going to be molested and it's going to be horrifying and all this kind of stuff. Whereas they don't really realize that like that doesn't happen. They're like, you're legislating things, and you're especially vindictive because you're legislating stuff that doesn't affect you. Like, if you are a cis white dude and you're like, I want to pass this anti-trans bathroom bill, and I have to do it, and it's to protect everybody, and it's to make sure that women aren't molested. That's why I'm doing this. It doesn't affect me because it's not really going to be a problem I think about, because for some reason I've never acknowledged that trans men exist. But at the same time, we're just doing it. Or sports. I need to make sports safer. You know, I'm not someone who actually actively ever watches women's sports. I've never seen a WNBA game. I've never seen a women's soccer game. I don't care about any of that. But I am going to pass this legislation, or at least try to, because again, it's to protect what I consider to be biological women. You know. They are active bigots and very dangerous ones, and and I don't think in my heart of hearts, and this is maybe someone who's disillusioned by growing up loving Dave Chappelle, I do not think that he genuinely knows all of that. I don't think he has, like, I know he tries to use the I have a trans friend card. That's the end, like 40 minutes of the routine. And Zero Books is like, moving, sensational, like, it's so strange. But like, yeah, I don't think he knows deeply how much it endangers trans people to say things like I'm Team TERF, gender is essential, all this kind of stuff. Like, it's you have a willful ignorance of these topics, and you are now propagating hatred by doing this. Like, to everyone who's been saying, are you like Team Cancel? I'm ironically giving this diatribe on the day that I've been blocked from Twitch. But like, are you for canceling Dave Chappelle? Like, my view has been pretty consistent on this. I think you should have a right to make jokes about whatever you want. Like, you can have a stand-up routine in which you make jokes about whatever you want. You can have the freedom to do that. But where are the punchlines to these jokes going? And once they reach a certain point, are you joking to make a joke, or are you joking to hide hate speech or bigotry? And if you are, it's usually pretty self-evident when you are, right? Like, there's only so many nudges, so many brackets you can do, so many like ha ha har har, before at a certain point someone's going to be like, well, no, this is just someone who is an alt-writer who's consistently provoking people by talking about the question until he feels that it really sticks. And that's been an alt-right tactic for a while. You know, the alt-right for a very long time was, let's hide behind the banner of humor. Let's hide behind the banner of trolling, of comedy. It's just for the lulz. We're just doing these, like, you know, swastikas in the video games for the lulz. We're just talking about how these people are vermin for the lulz, all that kind of stuff. And eventually, if we hide behind this banner of free speech and comedy and lulz, then no one's going to be able to stop us as we actually propagate sincere hate speech. So once it's been identified, then I don't consider that comedy anymore. I don't think you are being a comedian if you're doing that. You are simply being someone who is, trying to propagate hate speech. So then at which point I would separate that. I would be like, okay, well, that doesn't count as a comedy special anymore. He's not just joking about this for lulz. He's intentionally doing that. Now, does Dave Chappelle fall into that category? No, I don't. I think Dave Chappelle is willfully ignorant, and dangerously so. But he's willfully ignorant of these topics, and by propagating it, by doing these specials, by saying, I'm actually pro-trans, you don't understand, like, here's a whole joke about, like, he's got a whole joke in the routine. I can't remember if it was in this one or the last one, where he talks about how he's against anti-trans bathroom bills, and his shtick is that I don't think dudes realize that if these bills pass, then I'm going to be standing at a urinal, and then I'm going to see what I think is like a woman walk up to me, and then she's going to pull out her penis, and then she's going to pee in the urinal beside me. And I personally don't want that. And then the crowd laughs. And it's like, so that's why I don't think there should be, anti-trans bathroom bills to that effect. And so even in his, like, olive branches, even in his, like, you know what, I'm not actually as bigoted as you make me out to be, I'm not actually a transphobe, he's still reinforcing a whole bunch of very negative stereotypes, and then like cis people also just need to stop talking about trans people's genitals, to be totally honest, like on a consistent basis. Like, you know how wild it is whenever you look at like clips from even like 5 years ago, where any single time someone big celebrity comes out who's trans, even people who are supposed to be like progressives and all that, like your Oprahs or whatever, they'll be like, so what's going on down there, hee hee, and then the audience is like, ooh, we're confused. And it's like, okay, great. And like, I'm making myself incredibly vulnerable. I'm probably sharing one of the most important revelations that I have ever had personally as a human being, and at the same time, y'all are just curious about whether I have a PP or a vagine. That's what it all comes down to, right? Suspends? Really? No way. Netflix suspends trans employee who tweeted about the Dave Chappelle special. I've retweeted that tweet too. Internally, trans employees and allies are asking executives tough questions about the line between commentary and hate. But it's true, right? Like, I had a debate with Count Dankula, and everyone I know loves that debate because of one moment. At the very end, he wanted me to, like, I don't know, retract my statement or apologize, and instead I was just like, I'm not apologizing for shit, son, and then, like, went on the street. And that's all anyone ever remembers about that debate. The first, like, 30 minutes of it, we were actually trying to get to the heart of this, because his example is that, like, he did the pug speech, or sorry, the pug thing. He trained his dog, or no, he trained his girlfriend's dog to do a Hitler salute every time he said a very anti-Semitic phrase. And so he would do it over and over and over until the dog became like a little, he trained the dog to become like a little pug Nazi, and then made a YouTube video about it. The YouTube video went viral, and then he actually got arrested for doing that. He got arrested for hate speech in Scotland, and it became a huge thing. And so we started going back and forth on this very topic. And I was telling him, I was like, I love comedy. All right. I consider myself a comedian. Like, to me, comedy and the ability to joke about anything, I do feel that there is a certain sacred element to that. Like, I don't think, but like, once I've identified someone is either not making a joke, because they're like, you can't, there's a difference between, you should be able to joke about anything because you want to be transformative, you want to be transgressive, you want to bring light to issues, you want to talk about difficult topics. Yeah, no one's talking about this, oh, it's such a hard thing to talk about. That is very, very essential for comedy itself. For comedy to exist, it has to be within a milieu that is not comfortable for people, all right? And a lot of times it is about like shaking people's ideas and making that was the brilliance of Dave Chappelle when I was a kid, watching like Killing Them Softly and other specials by Chappelle, where I would actually be like, holy fuck, I'm like, I did not know this is where this was going, kind of shit, right? But if you are actively just doing what the alt-right does and the 4chan trolls do, which is that they try to hide behind the banner of comedy, we're doing jokes for the lulz, then I don't think you're doing comedy anymore. You are just doing hate speech. You're just doing racism. You're just doing whatever it is. You're just doing transphobia intentionally because you want to vilify people, because you're a bigot or because of whatever. And then afterwards, you try to hide behind the exact same banner. The whole like, hey, come on, this is just some edgy comedy. Guess you can't take it. Too many ideas for you here. Yeah, I know. I shared this with Jessie Genders, because Jessie Genders in her video was like, does anybody have any commentary from Black trans women on the Chappelle special? Because we hear a lot from, obviously, the most prominent voices for trans women are usually white trans women, just like most things on the internet. It's usually white people dominating these spaces. And so she was like, are there voices and comments by Black trans women? And so I sent her Dahlia Bell's article, because I thought Dahlia Bell nailed it. I can read that a little bit. I like how we went from world news to talking about Chappelle, by the way. Can I say one thing about the whole cancellation? In this case, people who are like, they canceled Chappelle again, holy shit, they've made Chappelle trend on Twitter for multiple days. They've made the special trend. They've made the numbers go through the roof, and he's making $20 million off it. I think he made $20 million per special or something to that effect. $60 to $80 million. If that's what canceling is, then I'm sure everybody is waiting to be canceled. Canceling is now kind of just like a marketing device. It's the big new marketing device. That's what it is. You know, we're going to move from the cycle, because ads go in cycles, right? There was the sexy cycle. Let's sell everything with like, you know, TNA. There was the wholesome cycle. Let's sell everything with emotion. There was the woke cycle that we were just going through. Where like, hey, let's sell everything through a cause or a controversy. You know, Gillette is about toxic masculinity. Nike's about Black Lives Matter, stuff like that. And now the next one's going to be about canceling. You know, it's going to be like everyone does something. It was like, looks like I got canceled again. Time to do a whole press circuit to talk about how I've been censored. And then that's what I'm going to do. I should, right? Netflix has suspended a trans employee who tweeted about Dave Chappelle's comedy special The Closer. In a stand-up set, which was released on October 5th, Chappelle doubles down on his jokes about the LGBTQ groups. The next day, Netflix software engineer Tara Field tweeted about Chappelle, writing that the comedian attacks the trans community and that the validity of trans in the special. This is a great thread, by the way. The thread went viral, quickly spiraling into a conversation about free speech and cancel culture. Netflix then suspended Field along with 2 other employees for trying to attend a director-level meeting they weren't invited to. Another trans employee is quitting the company over the special, and Field's comments were handled. In a statement emailed to The Verge, Netflix spokesperson pushed back against the idea that Field was suspended for tweeting. It is absolutely untrue to say that we have suspended any employee for tweeting about the show. Our employees are encouraged to display openly, and we support their right to do so. The special sparked significant controversy inside Netflix. Shortly after it came out, employees started asking pointed questions about whether or not trans people were included in the decision to air the special, and whether the company draws the line between commentary and transphobia. It's the same thing with Spotify. Spotify is very big during Pride Week with their beautiful rainbow-colored ads. They're beautiful. All colors of the rainbow are beautiful. Every letter is amazing. We are pro-trans. We are pro-queer. We are definitely on the right side of history, everybody. For this 1 month, get ready. Also, Joe Rogan, do you want 100 milli? Do you want 100 milli? Yeah, 100 million to do your show every single day. Joe Rogan, here's 100 milli. Yeah, bring on Ben Shapiro, Joe Rogan. You got Alex Jones, maybe Steven Crowder. Bring them on and talk about trans people. Let's see how that's going to go. Well, here's more money to keep doing that. Yeah, propagate it. Get it on every single airwave. Yeah, that's good. More controversy. Oh, shit. Joe Rogan's been canceled again. Looks like more people than ever are listening. Damn, this cancellation is just so savage. I don't know what to do. You can't do a carbon offset for bigotry. Yeah, I would recommend this article by Dahlia Bell, who happens to be a black trans comedian. Dear Dave, we're both comedians. I guess that makes me a member of your tribe. I'm sure you've never heard of me though, but I think I can get at least 3 reasons for that. I'm black, I'm a woman, and I'm transgender, i.e. a trans. No, I'm not writing in hopes of someday opening for you. In fact, I can't think of anything I have never wanted to do that you could possibly offer me, least of all an apology. I don't need an apology for all the trans jokes. I'm 40 years old. You think I've never heard a trans joke? Years before I knew what trans was as an available identity, I knew what the T-slur were punchlines, and that's what got me and my peers salty about your latest special, The Closer. I'm legitimately thankful for Chappelle's special for one reason. I've always been a bit self-conscious that the first 15 minutes of our special are trans jokes, but now that he spent over an hour on LGBTQ people, I feel pretty good. Each time I hear Dave Chappelle has a new special, I feel sad. Not because I know the trans jokes are coming, but because I know the same trans jokes are coming. Watching The Closer reminded me of just how influential you had been on my early stand-up and understanding of comedy. Your formulaic joke structure and all too predictable edgelord punchlines took me right back to my very first year performing at open mics. But hey, you've been doing this for 33 years. That's no small achievement. It only makes sense that you might run out of ideas. Even so, as a longtime fan, something I'm always admired about comedy was its ability to push boundaries and challenge norms. Now it's 2021, and I think we can all agree that bitter old men griping about progress are killing comedy. Were I to bitch and moan about people having taken an offense at my previous set, I would rightly be booed off the stage. And you know what? I'd be grateful, because I'm a comedian and criticism is how we grow. So watching your special, I couldn't help but think, this dude is 48 years old, been doing comedy for 33 years, and still hasn't built up a thick enough skin to take criticism. It's rather sad, actually, because as comedians, it's our job to say shit for money. There's no obligation on anyone else to approve of the stupid shit we say, which brings us to this next issue. After coming on stage, you rightly call attention to your status as rich and famous, which is the only reason anybody gets a laugh or a break for black people beating up Asians. Hate crimes aren't so much a joke as an American way of life. It could be like getting a laugh break for saying, I drank a cup of coffee. This is, of course, the only first of many basic jokes to come. What's it called when a troll says every offensive thing they can think of to distract their audience from the shitty belief they're trying to defend? Deflection? Yeah, that's the best section of what devolves into a TED Talk for TERFs, starting with your torturous claim to being a feminist for the first time ever. To be fair, your observation about white America being more appalled by black people repeating on stage what we've heard our black mothers say than they aren't by a black man murdering another is valid. Problem being, in this context, is only as valid as saying, what about black on black crime? You cunningly asked your audience, is it possible that a gay person can be racist? Obviously, the answer is yes, and obviously that has nothing to do with your comedy being outdated, transphobic, and frankly hack. In an honest debate, you simply can't use racist white gay male interchangeably with LGBT, which is not synonymous with the trans. Since you also enjoy Google, I recommend the following terms: strawman, gaslighting, Motte and Bailey fallacy. Also, just to be petty, you owe me royalties for my Mike Pence's gay joke. I wrote it 4 years ago when it was relevant. On behalf of the trans community, I'll go ahead and address your weakest defenses. How much do you have to perpetuate in my self-image? Not at all. I just want you to shut up. You said, you shouldn't discuss this in front of black people. Why, Dave? Why shouldn't you discuss this in front of black people? Did you once again imagine all trans people are white? Or do you assume that there's some inherent danger awaiting us amongst the larger black community? And why might that be? Regardless, neither explanation sits well with me. You asked, why is it easier for Bruce Jenner to change his gender than it is to Cassius Clay to change his name? That's because Muhammad Ali changed his name in 1964, whereas Caitlyn Jenner changed her gender in 2015. Other factors in Jenner's favor include living in California, and most importantly, being rich and famous, just like you, Kevin Hart, and DaBaby, who no one references as Jonathan. You're basically comparing apples and interstellar spacecraft. We are listening, Dave. We listen when you declared yourself Team Turf. We listen when you compared genders to blackface as if both were defined by slapping on some paint to make a mockery of those we oppress. And what about you, Dave? What could be a greater mockery than throwing black women under the bus to cape for J.K. Rowling, an insidious white woman? But hey, you claim Caitlyn Jenner is a wonderful person. Chappelle is standing in solidarity with a woman who can imagine... oh, sorry, I can't read that. Anyways, it goes on. It's actually it's almost done. In a community with an abnormally high rate of depression and suicide, that's the part that hurt. Every trans person I know has lost someone by suicide. Rarely has the reason ever been that other trans people have said to them on Twitter, hell, you said it yourself, Dave, Twitter isn't real. The marginalization, mockery, dehumanization, and violence many of us face every day for most of our lives is what fuels our despair. For you to use Daphne's tragedy as your closing tag is the only thing you've done that's made me angry enough to write a letter. Pretty intense.
Well, the whole point really breaks down to that Dave was saying that the transgender movement was more successful and easier than the black movement in our society.
Right.
And look at what's happening as a result of his special. They're proving his point.
So we talked about this last week. Okay. So it's something beautiful.
It's so funny. It's so funny. It's great. This means he's holding two cocks and he's yeah. It's funny because gay, funny, right? You know, gay. Good. It's just like it's comedy gold. Really, I don't know where the writers' room sits afterwards, but they deserve to be on some high thrones. I'll tell you that much.
Beautiful, which I'm proud.
Yes.
So look, so Dave Chappelle. We talked about this last week. We had not watched the special. Did you watch the special?
I did.
Yeah. Okay. So I watched the special too. Pretty good special. I would say not as best, not as worst, but pretty damn good. Very good.
And I came out. I really like the coming out swinging, and I guess we can talk later about it. But it was a whole piece.
Yes.
And it was deliberately offensive in the beginning to just
almost like a Pink Floyd album, like Mars Volta, where D-Low's at the Comatorium, where it's like it followed a theme.
Right. It was a whole piece, and I really respected it.
Yeah, and after watching the special and seeing the end of the special, my mind was blown that people. Well, it should have been blown that people were unbelievably, just grossly misrepresenting the special and what Dave Chappelle did and said. And we'll show you the ending to it because the whole ending is a very pro-LGBT message, a pro-empathy message while still maintaining pro-free speech. But he has a very touching end to it where some people are left kind of teary-eyed. So this is something that now I've had the luxury of watching all of it, makes me even more disgusted with Jocelyn Moore, the showrunner of the Netflix program Dear White People, wanted to boycott Netflix. And this has been making the rounds, right? And there even we'll read another article that posted last night at The Guardian. In an interview with Variety, Moore said, I have been thrown against a wall for using a woman's bathroom. I would just say it's ironic that for somebody who famously walked away from a TV show because he felt like the messages of the joke got lost, he doesn't see what the messages of these jokes do to people.
So I think in essence what Crowder is going to do is reference the end of Chappelle's special, where Chappelle talks about the stand-up comedian Daphne and how she's committed suicide. And he utilizes the fact that he never saw her as another, as in like a member of the trans community, but ultimately as a member of his community, aka comedians, because she was a comedian deep down, and that she was okay with people making jokes as comedians should, right? About almost anything. That's kind of the purpose. And it really turns into, to be totally frank, the defense of I have a trans friend at the very end. And I mean, it becomes extra complicated because now we've got all of the conservatives. We've got Louder Crowder has one, Ben Shapiro has one. I've got one by Sargon of Akkad, of course, naturally, every single one of them, all coming and rushing to defense. Well, I mean, not just people on the right. Zero Books is also rushing to the fence. Tim Black as well, of this and grossly misunderstanding why the trans community is so very upset with this. And like, I know, and this is going to sound massively hypocritical because all the time when I'm watching people who are upset at, say, a Star Wars film for having a woman in it, I'll be like, fine, cool, don't watch it. Just turn it off, right? And in this case, people might be saying the exact same thing to me. Like, okay, fine, Lance, why did you watch it? They're like, why are you upset? And to be honest, I probably wouldn't have even done a segment on this, talked about it very much outside of just like how disappointed I was in Chappelle, make a tweet about it, that kind of stuff, right? But it is because this is now becoming a point of full public discourse, and it's growing into a culture war event where now people on the right are saying once again, because this is like the third time this has happened with Dave Chappelle, that Dave Chappelle is actually just an incredible comic, which is funny because the right embracing Dave Chappelle lasted up until he did that special about the murder of George Floyd, and then all of them were like, whoa, he went full SJW, what's going on? Fucking Chappelle, I thought he was the voice of a generation, SJW, but they're totally missing why, again, parts of Chappelle's special were so problematic. And I've heard defense from friends of mine who are liberals, who are like, but there's so much like truth bombs that are being thrown in the middle of this as well. And there's very important things that have to be talked about that Chappelle brings up, but you do not have to do them. Like, it's not a zero-sum game is kind of my biggest point, right? You don't have to utilize your platform and your massive like voice that you have and talk about issues that are very important and do that by throwing trans people underneath those jokes. Like, that's why everyone keeps saying you were punching down, because you were. In many parts in the special, he's distinctly punching down, and he even brings it up. He's like, people told me I was punching down, right? I didn't even know what that means. A lot of the very surface level, just dad joke style things, there's no social commentary there. If you have he does a whole bit about, trans women's, vaginas and how they're clearly different than like what he calls, biological women's vaginas. And it's like, no one is saying they aren't. What you're doing right now is, again, you're a cis person talking about trans people's genitals, which again, like I said, is a huge problem. But you're adding to this idea that trans weird or trans bad or just trans different, right? You're othering an entire group for a really shitty punchline. And that's kind of what I found through a lot of that segment. That's why it was deeply disappointing to me. Not because I think in some way that there's no way to make funny trans jokes. Like, I'm not trying to say that I'm sorry, because they're a marginalized community, trans people, you may never speak of them. Never. No one will speak of them, right? But if your punchline is just trans weird, trans bad, then yeah, that's not comedy, right? You're making jokes, you're formulating jokes, but it's also bigotry, because that is in essence what you're doing, and you're propagating these ideas that are very dangerous. And also, yeah, trans cool as fuck. I cannot stress this enough. Like, trans people are so powerful and so cool that when they were scientifically discovered by the Nazis started burning the very books on gender, because they were like, my word, these people are too powerful. We must destroy this knowledge. Burn it all. Trans people are very, very fucking cool. And so, of course, now we've got Crowder, all of them coming to his defense.
BT, does that change your opinion if you think that Dave Chappelle went too far, or if you thought he was hateful, or even if you thought
then he just turned it around.
That's why he's one of the best.
I thought it was fantastic, yeah.
Well, and it's a great story. It's about having a friend who is transgender, who he lets open for him, who essentially bombs.
Yeah.
And then somebody yells out from the crowd, does the carpet match the drapes, to attack her, and she turns around and says, actually, I have hardwood floors. And that makes everybody laugh, and it gives you an idea of this woman's sense of humor as well as his.
Yeah.
So he builds this wonderful base of how he has a relationship with another human being outside of all the BS, outside of doing it just for posturing.
Yeah.
This is just a relationship he has with somebody, and he's also a black guy who's, known for being irreverent. This isn't
like the core of a lot of the comedy, and what I found to be probably one of the toughest questions for the majority of Chappelle's specials, again, is talking about the LGBTQ community and talking about gay men, specifically cis white gay men. And in this one, he brings it up. Can gay guys be racist? Of fucking course they can. Of fucking course they can. The thing is, and this is what I don't understand, is like, it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. Like, the emancipation of Black Americans, the injustices that they've suffered, and the fact that as much progress as there has been made socially, materially, Black people, Black families still make a fraction of that of their white counterparts, and that number is going down. Like, it's going down. It's eventually could reach zero if these trends continue, kind of thing, in terms of just having net assets. That is a massive problem that needs to be talked about, and that needs to be addressed. Frankly, that needs to be addressed. And there's also Black trans people is the part that, like, I almost wanted to scream at the TV when I'm watching it, you know? Like, you have to understand, and this is going to be one of the whitest things I've ever said, but as a black person, when you're walking around in society, you are seen as a black person, right? Like it is one of the first things people see about someone else is the color of your skin. So this is a black person and how they're treated therein. So you have safety within your own groups then, because in a broader society, if you live in either like, you know, a white supremacist structure, a very racist part of town, whatever you want to call it, you have safety within your own community. If you are black and trans, that means now it's a completely separate category because you may have the exact same experience as cis black people, for example, right? You have the exact same experience as cis black people, and yet you are also othered within your own community. So even if you feel that like I feel safer within a black community, I'm also now going to be different within that community itself, which sounds so very scary because it's like I can't find safety even within a community that's already marginalized on top of everything else. And I mean, it's a tough thing to explain because when you explain it to conservatives, they think there's some kind of oppression Olympics. They're like, okay, so every single one of you lefties seems to want to just stack everything one on the other, right? They're like, I'm oppressed because of this. I happen to be that. I happen to be this as well. So let's add the fact that, you know, you may have ADHD and this as well. You know, you're a quarter Hispanic, you're a quarter this, and then now we've stacked and you've reached your score. What's your oppression score? Fucking BuzzFeed even has a game for that where you like try to find out how much privilege you have. But it doesn't work that way. Like intersectional politics, intersectional race theory, critical race theory. Oh no, there's that word. Every single one of those things, like they are separate categories. The experience of a black trans woman is going to be completely separate than that of a black woman. Just like it's going to be completely separate than that of a white woman. Just like it's going to be completely separate than that of a white trans woman. Just like it's going to be completely separate from that of a white cis Karen, right? Like it doesn't matter as you go down.
Chappelle has recently outed himself as a TERF. Dun dun dun. Yeah, a TERF is someone who believes that the definition of woman is adult human female because he's a Nazi?
Or a dictionary enthusiast?
Or a dictionary enthusiast. Although saying that some dictionaries have been gotten to at this point, and so they don't have that as the definition of woman anymore. But I love Pink News' coverage of this, so I thought we'd use it. So-called comedian Dave Chappelle says he's Team TERF while defending J.K. Rowling.
So-called.
Again, of all the people, like so-called author J.K. Rowling.
No, but also so-called comedian. What does he only identify as a comedian?
Yeah.
Is that all he does?
Helicopter
There's no essential
joke.
characteristic about Dave Chappelle that makes him a comedian.
The one joke. We got the
Really
one
big
joke
think
in
on
a
that
minute.
But what I love about this is like, okay, well, who's Pink News to say that Dave Chappelle isn't a comedian? Like, what does he need to achieve to be a comedian in Pink News' eyes? You got to believe in
Tell
intersectionality.
jokes to an audience.
Be popular with millions upon millions of people.
Not necessarily to be a comedian.
Well, I mean, I don't think so, but like, I think once you are really popular for doing stand-up to millions and millions of people, then you can't not be a comedian.
No, you have to be an intersectional philosopher, and then you're a comedian.
Exactly. But again, it's defending J.K. Rowling, like literally the Voldemort of the intersectional movement, because she's like, yeah, maybe there's something biological about being a woman. It's like, yeah, crazy. Welcome to the new world. But anyway, they say Chappelle is facing backlash for remarks he made about the LGBT community, declaring he's Team TERF in his new special, The Closer, which sounds like a really good watch now that they've said that.
This also shouldn't be a supplier.
They realize that British is a made-up identity. Don't tell Sargon that. Oh, no. British, it's a way of life. I was born a Brit, and I will die a Brit. And I will also make sure that Britain stays British, if you know what I mean. We're not going to have any filthy outsiders coming in here and muddy the waters, you know. Change the gene pool slightly.
All right.
No.
I remember watching his last special.
He wasn't very intersectional.
No.
During the show, which came out on Netflix, Chappelle addressed statements he had made in the past, including about trans people. In one monologue, the comedian mused about the controversy surrounding J.K. Rowling before declaring he agreed with her, saying gender is a fact. Oof. And the TERFs are just like, oh, and the social justice was just clutching their chest going, I can't believe that Chappelle has betrayed me like this. Every human being in this room, every human being on Earth had to pass through the legs of a woman to be on Earth.
I'm going to be honest. I can think of no better way to trying to explain to Dave Chappelle how these jokes were transphobic than have the jokes read out loud by Sargon of Akkad. This is actually a service. This is a service that Sargon of Akkad is about to provide. Because one of the worst ones is coming up. The whole Beyond Pussy routine. So let's listen to Sargon of Akkad tell the joke. I'm sure he's going to have the same kind of cadence and timing as Dave Chappelle.
That's a fact. He continued. Now, I'm not saying that to say trans women aren't women. I'm just saying that those vaginas that they got, you know what I mean? I'm not saying...
He skipped saying pussy and then in lieu went with vagina. Isn't that more hardcore? I don't know. Oh my, yes, slightly befuddled it seems here, but yes, lady parts, the below area. Yes, as you know, the one that's next to the anus. Yes, thank you.
Saying it's not vagina, but it's beyond vagina or impossible vagina. It tastes like vagina, but it's not quite. What is it? Is it?
Does it?
I mean, I have no idea. My wife would kill me if I knew. So I can't say I know. You can go and find out for me, though, if you want.
I'd rather not.
Field research. What does a neo-vagina taste like?
Neo-vagina.
That's what they're called.
Right. Wait, actually?
Yeah.
You're kidding me?
No.
That's like Dave Chappelle came up with it, you know?
Yeah, I know, but that's what they really call them. And so you can go and explore a neo-vagina for research.
Again, like I said, cis people are just like obsessed with talking about trans people's genitals.
If you listen to what I'm saying, clearly my problem has always been with white people, which is...
I get it's a joke, but at the same time, it is very telling of the intersectional logic.
Yeah.
No, don't worry. I'm not defecting. I still hate white people. It's like,
exactly.
so to be part of the left, you have to hate white people.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, that's true, but it's obviously a joke.
Yeah, but the joke's logic.
No, this one's okay. We'll fine for this time. I don't want to obviously lose our new acquisition of Mr. Chappelle. So let us just say that he doesn't actually hate white people. I'm sure he respects us and our superiority in terms of the hierarchy. Yes.
And does have to intertwine with.
And in Chappelle's defense, his like comedic critiques of white Americans are hilarious. Like his white guy voice is the funniest thing in the world. I can't do it, obviously, but he's got a particular white guy.
I can't do it. I can't do an impersonation of a white person. No, I'm far too British for that, darling. Yes, don't worry about it.
Voice, and it's just brilliant. Anyway, but Chappelle's jokes sparked criticism online, with many saying they felt more malicious than hilarious, whichever it was at the time, is essentially like molded by J.K. Rowling. And that was all fine until they transitioned, and then J.K. Rowling came out as a TERF. And they were like, well, how could you do this to me? And so they've changed their name to Ellen.
Hang on, wait, but that would require that they were identifying as a man, calling themselves Harry Potter and being like, Lamau, isn't that funny? And then they transitioned, they kept the Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I'm still Harry, but I'm a woman.
Yep.
And then only now.
And then J.K. Rowling's like, actually, woman's adult, human, female. And they're like, oh, you've betrayed me. Another stab in the back.
Call me Ellen.
Yeah. And then, exactly. And
the timeline doesn't make sense.
Yeah. But the thing is, I don't know what to say about this, but it's like, I had a very loose connection with the name because of the character. It never truly felt like my name to begin with, and instead felt like a wizard people associated with me. So I reckon I have far less intense name dysphoria than most trans people. The only part that especially under the bed, like Nazis.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast, hello to you.
You two are so weird and awkward. It's a very odd duo. Who does this appeal to? Like, a lot of you are British. Who in Britain watches this kind of stuff? Is it just like old dads, I assume? Like, oh yes, rightly so. Yes, all right, yes. This popular culture, this internet degeneracy, and all these different LGBTQ. What letter of the month is going to be coming up to me next? Yes, close the borders. I'm very happy I'm voted for Brexit. I'm just a little pissed off about all the petrol, of course. Do wish there was more petrol available, but it is what it is, you know, boys. He'll get us through, yes. Keep strong, carry on, is what they say.
Fs are everywhere. You got to watch out for them, mate. Under the bed, like Nazis.
Shitty. All I gotta say is shitty. Shitty. It sucks. Dave Chappelle should not be canceled. Can we finally put this to rest? Cancellation, as conservatives define it, does not exist. It does not exist. J.K. Rowling, canceled to high hell, is publishing books, has a new Harry Potter movie coming out. I think she's directing this one, going to make millions upon millions of dollars. Sweet, cool. Canceled again. You shower me with money, cancelers. Dave Chappelle was canceled almost every single one of his Netflix specials. Canceled. This is like the 6th cancellation. Still making $20 million a pop, just raking in the money. Yeah, it's not a thing. Like, even the people who are canceled, like, I was kicked off social media. Now I don't have a platform. I'm telling you on Fox News right now, live in front of millions and millions of people. Like, Kevin Sorbo is like, oh yeah, they shut my Facebook down for a little while. I'm clearly canceled, This is a pretty shitty situation. Tucker Carlson.
Hey, do you like movies? Do you like Serfs? Do you want movies and Serfs watching the movies? So then come over to the new channels. It's the Serfs the cinema. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Can you do the thing, that thumbs up and comment and all those things that help us out in the algorithm that controls every aspect of our lives? Also, if you happen to have a Facebook account, can you delete it? Like, just delete it. You should probably delete your Facebook account because it's not a great company. But hey, if you can't do that for whatever reason, I understand. And could you also go to facebook.com/thesurftimes then and give us a little like and a follow. We're just trying to push back against the fact that people like Ben Shapiro happen to dominate the platform entirely. And when everyone asks why do older generations believe the things they believe, one of the problems is the majority of them on social media use Facebook. So to counter that, we're just going to be on there too now. Also, if you happen to have a union or a worker co-op or even a leftist project, podcast, website, Zoom, MySpace, it doesn't matter. We will advertise it for free on this channel. All you got to do is go to weareserfs.com and use the forms that we got there, weareserfs.com. Thanks, everybody.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Just, may you shower us mortals with gifts from the heaven. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are your humble jesters, clowning around for your amusement. To our lord, Trevor R. and Alexander Thaler, we give you our thanks for this meager land for us to toil our seed. To our knights of the Round Table, Hagbard Sealine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariana McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Ants Are Still Running the World, Coulter Smith, Tom Groh, Val 9000, Jenna Tal, Dark Puppy, Quiet One 85, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, The Tim Caucus, Multimondi, Trevor Janis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojak, Saren 42, Chronic de Hemphog, Catherine, Radical Maniac, Ramon Acosta, Nkosin, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Political Puppy, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Josh Mickelson, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our glasses and we salute you, our comrades.